Hey, it's been a while. I haven't given a live in quite a bit, and every time I talk to Shorty, he wants to know why I haven't. So this is for you, Shorty. I figured I'd come back and do a quick little video, uh, just so you can quit waiting for it. So I went back to the way I used to do it a while back, and I looked at popular search terms that led people to my website, and a still very high ranking searches in differing ways, but all dealing with domestic violence and family assault charges. And so I thought I would do a quick video talking about the collateral consequences of a conviction for domestic violence, and specifically if there's an affirmative finding of family violence. So sometimes, the punishment that is offered by the state in a case is something a lot of people can accept. Sometimes, let's say it's time served and a fine, or probation. Doesn't matter. If it can be a punishment that someone can live with. However, and I see this too much when people represent themselves, they don't understand the collateral consequences of an affirmative finding of family violence, which often comes with anything involving domestic violence. And the affirmative finding can affect you in ways you never imagined. One of the biggest that I face often is that if there's an affirmative finding of family violence, you will lose your right to possess firearms for 5 years. And the reason that I run into this as a problem is because a lot of my clients charged with domestic violence are men who hunt. And if there's an affirmative finding of family violence against you, you're done hunting for the next 5 years, and a lot of people can't take that. And then, of course, a bigger one, or not a bigger one, but another one that's really important is it could obviously affect your employment. If you are a daycare worker, a teacher, in the military, a bus driver, a city, county, or state employee, a pilot, and this is not an exclusive list, I'm just, what I could come up with quickly, firefighter, police officer, healthcare worker. Typically, all of these, if you were to have an affirmative finding of family violence, would mean the loss of your employment. Here locally, we've had cases in the past with police officers accused of something like this, who have gone to trial specifically because they had to attempt to fight this so they would not lose their peace officer's license. And it's kind of like any type of employment that you have that requires security clearance, a special license, or the ability to carry a weapon will likely be affected, and you would probably lose that employment if there was an affirmative finding of family violence. Again, because if you have to carry a gun as part of your employment, you'll be barred from that for 5 years from the finding, and so it's a big deal. Another one we see, and we see this two ways, is colleges and universities. You could lose your acceptance to school with this type of charge. Another one we see in that is drugs. Although sometimes it's not whether or not, and when I say drugs, I mean a young person with a drug charge. It does not affect your ability to go to school. However, it can affect your ability to get financial aid. So it just kind of put me in the mindset of thinking about, a lot of times people don't understand that there can be collateral consequences outside of whatever punishment is being discussed in a case. And again, in Galveston County, especially in misdemeanor court, people represent themselves daily, and many times they don't know what collateral consequences could come out of this. Same thing if you're not a United States citizen, depending upon your status, you could lose that status for a domestic violence case, be deported, or be denied re-entry into the country. And these are all things that, competent attorneys are aware of, and we advise our clients of. The problem, again, that I see most of this is with people trying to represent themselves in misdemeanor court. Recently, I was in a misdemeanor court, and I was sitting at counsel table, and a young man had come up who was representing himself, and he didn't speak English, so they were using a translator. And I was listening to the plea negotiations and what he was about to walk into, and I couldn't take it. So I talked to him a little bit, got some more information, and basically I ended up working out a much better deal for his situation for him. I didn't charge him. I didn't want to see somebody not being taken advantage of, but I just knew that he did not fully understand the consequences of what he was about to do. And so I ended up standing in, helping him with the plea, and standing, before the bench and helping him take his plea. Most of you that know me know that it is a big irritation of mine that here in Galveston County, defendants in misdemeanor court are offered to speak to the DA themselves and attempt to work their own case out without the help of either an appointed attorney or a retained attorney. And so, again, that's just kind of got me on the path of, collateral consequences to convictions. And I was looking at the search history again, like I said, and we had a high number of searches for cases involving family violence, domestic violence. And I know I've covered this before, and I've blogged on it, but it just, I don't know if I'd ever touched on collateral consequences of a conviction, which, there are resources that attorneys have where we can look up collateral consequences for all types of convictions. Crimes of moral turpitude that could affect your ability. An easy one is theft. Theft is a crime of moral turpitude, and lots of times people will get caught shoplifting. Walmart, Target, you name the store, and they'll go to court by themselves, and the prosecutors will offer something that sounds really good, like time served and a fine, or time served and no fine, just pay your court costs, which to some people sounds really good because, I don't have to pay a lawyer, and I don't have to do anything. I just say I'm guilty and walk out of here, which is true. The thing is that with a conviction for theft, future employment will be almost impossible. I don't really know of any employers off the top of my head that will hire anyone convicted of theft. The obvious concern being that this employee could potentially steal from the employer. So it's important that if you're in a particular situation with whatever case you have, that you talk to your attorney, us, about what you do for a living, possible collateral consequences to any conviction. It's just that a good attorney is going to make sure that you understand the full range of possibilities that could happen in a case, because sometimes, obviously, people will come to us that do not have what I would call a viable defense. And so when that happens, we have to find alternative ways to resolve a case without perhaps avoiding these collateral consequences. I recently had a woman that had been employed somewhere local for over 20 years and was arrested for shoplifting. And HR found out and terminated her employment. It looks as though if I can get that case dismissed, the employer will let her return to employment, but just for the mere charge. She had not even been found guilty. Just for the charge, the employer terminated her employment. And it's going to come out okay, I'll make sure that, but there's just so much that you need to take into consideration before you make an ultimate decision of how you're going to dispose of your case. So I wanted to touch on that. It's a shorter video today. I got to get back in the habit of doing these. I'll try to hit y'all again next Tuesday and see if I can get back into the habit of doing these on a regular basis. Anyway, y'all enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully I'll talk to y'all next week.